You got a neutral fundraising platform.
Yes.
You're not trying to be involved, but I'm curious your thoughts on this case. So let me just throw some information first. GiveSendGo allows people to raise money for legal defense.
Right.
Regardless of the presumption of guilt or innocence or otherwise. And you've gotten a lot of heat from people for allowing them to run a fundraiser, but you've also allowed many, many others. I believe Luigi Mangione has a fundraiser on GiveSendGo.
He does. And like you said, many, many, many others. Like I could go through a laundry list of people that the right would potentially consider heroes. The Kyle Rittenhouses, the Daniel Pennies. I mean, Daniel Penny's situation, I don't think the guy, he verbally said some stuff, but I don't think he had even punched or struck anybody, Jordan Neely, before Daniel Penny intervened in that situation. So we've allowed campaigns across the board. We believe in that presumption of innocence. With this case, obviously you can see what you can see, but the problem is there's so much that we don't know. I mean, you can try to adjudicate these things and talk about the facts that we know, but I believe that there is so much that we still don't know. And it makes it very difficult, which is why we take the principled stance that we take.
I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it as shockingly and offensive to everybody as I can, as fast as I can. Then I'm going to pause for 5 seconds, and then you're all going to agree with me. I'm talking to the audience. So let me offend you first. Karmelo Anthony will be acquitted. He will be found not guilty. Okay, is everybody sufficiently angry? Because far-left writers are going to threaten the jurors, and the jurors are going to bend the knee. Not because he's actually innocent. That's what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to be like the Arbery case. I think it's going to be like the Floyd case with Chauvin, where they're going to imprison, the jury is going to side with whatever the left is, and the writers will not be imprisoned or face justice.
I personally think, and this is why one of the reasons why we allow campaigns for things like this is so that somebody in a situation, Karmelo in this scenario, can have the best defense, and it actually removes some of the vitriol on the left in this case from being able to say he was unjustly given, he wasn't given afforded the same defense situation that these other ones. It actually removes that or decreases the likelihood of that, because they're going to have to sit back at the end of whatever comes out here and they're going to say, you know what, he raised $500,000. He actually was able to hire a private attorney and get a great defense. And that's, to me, a calming effect. It's another reason why we allow these types of campaigns.
And by the way, that would be a completely legitimate take. So from my perspective, I think anybody should be able to raise as much money as they possibly can for their legal defense, because the money matters. We'd all like to think we live in a world where how many resources you can bring to the legal fight doesn't affect the kind of justice you get. But I guarantee you it does. A $200,000 legal defense is a lot different than a $20,000 legal defense. And if the left or whoever's on Karmelo Anthony's side politically were to say, hey, he got defunded, that's why he got convicted, there's merit to that argument.
Yes.
And however, what has his family been doing as of late? Now, they say they don't have access to the funds, but they moved into a bigger house in a gated community, got security, and bought reportedly an Escalade. So
didn't they move into their house like 6 months ago or like 8 months ago before the murder even happened, though?
Is that true? I don't know.
I'm almost certain it was.
I saw numerous reports saying
summer of 2024.
My understanding is that they had told the judge the reason they couldn't afford the $1 million bail was that they didn't have access to the funds, and they were going to use it to secure new housing and security. And then the judge lowered the bail down by 75%.
Yeah, so part of that, I think there's partial truths. This is the problem, is that partial truths just run wild. I think what we saw was that they were already renting a $900,000 square foot home. They lived in that type of home already. As a result of this situation, they found another one within a gated community to rent as well, so that they could have some security for their family. The Cadillac that was supposed to have been bought recently wasn't. It's a couple of years old. It was bought in 2023. So a lot of these things are mixed up in the media. I think it was a New York Post.
New York Post. Yeah. I believe The Sun. I believe like even The Independent have all reported this.
Oh, they did. And most of it's been already fact-checked and debunked. It was unreliable sources. And it was a neighbor that said, well, they got a temporary tag on a thing, so they just bought this new vehicle. It's like,
wow.
Most of this stuff, completely unreliable sources, and it's caused narratives. And this is why, I mean, if you watch the interview that the mom did the other day, she addressed some of these things in it, which is just like there's false narratives that are running rampant.
Is that the same one that the victim's father showed up to?
Yes.
Brilliant move.
It's crazy.
He showed up. It was absolutely brilliant. I think it kind of shows the circumstance of, people coming after the family and saying like, well, he had no duty to retreat. He could have sat there the entire time. This guy was getting accosted because he sat underneath the tent. Oh, dad shows up to a place that seems like it's open to the public, and now it's inappropriate for him to be somewhere where he has the legal right to be. Oh my God, the juxtaposition. It's crazy. It's almost like dad did that on purpose and was brilliantly done.
Let's clarify. There are a lot of things that I've seen online where people are so adamant to adjudicate this case before we've gone to trial,
Right.
that they have said things that are incorrect as it pertains to self-defense. I've seen people say things like, you can't use lethal force if someone is simply grabbing you. They say things like, you can't use lethal force unless you've been touched. I've seen things like, you can't use lethal force unless you are facing explicit lethal force. And there's caveats to all of these things. So I asked the lawyer himself, are there circumstances where being grabbed in any scenario, like you can imagine one, where lethal force would be justifiable self-defense?
Absolutely. I mean, everyone's asking the wrong question or answering the wrong question. The question again is, did you have a reasonable perception that you were facing an imminent threat of unlawful deadly force harm? If the answer to that is yes, you can use deadly force in self-defense. And there's an infinite number of ways that can happen. If someone just grabs you, are they grabbing you and they have a knife in their other hand? Because that's going to be a bad day for you. Are they grabbing you and they're 200 pounds heavier than you? Bad day for you. That could well be a deadly force threat.
What if they grab you and there's 5 guys all around you?
Sure, then there's a disparity of numbers. Then it's the force of the collective group that's threatening you, not just one individual.
What if they don't touch you at all? Are there circumstances where deadly force is justified?
Yes, of course. If someone comes up to me and opens up their jacket and says, "Give me your wallet," and they show a gun, they haven't touched me. I don't have to suffer a scratch before I can defend myself. I can defend myself against the threat that's about to occur. It's an imminent threat that you're defending yourself against. In fact, if some guy runs up and punches you and then he runs away, you can't use force against that guy. The punch is over. The attack's over. That would be vengeance after that.
What if he stabs you and runs away? Same thing?
Same thing. I mean, I know you'd want to.
I mean, people would be like, how dare you? But
Right.
yeah.
He'd have to continue to represent a deadly force threat to somebody. So if he's running around stabbing people, and so it seems likely he's about to stab someone else after you, but then you're actually shooting him in defense of others, in defense of the people.
So the other important thing, too, is that all these states are different. So it's hard to know.
They're not that different. It's about 80% the same across the 50 states.
Yeah, you're talking about Tennessee versus Garner, which you were talking about in the car a little bit earlier. That's the fleeing felon rule. Like, what you can use deadly force on a fleeing felon if he's still a threat to others. However, hypothetically, and this is the Tennessee Garner case, if you drop a firearm and you jump a fence and the cop is still chasing after you, he can't plug you in the back. That threat of deadly use of force to the community is no longer present.
Yeah, the issue is not the flight. The issue is,
Right.
does the person still represent a danger to somebody?
There was that case in Atlanta which sparked those massive BLM riots where a guy he fell asleep. I think he was drunk in a drive-through. When the officers showed up, he fought them.
Yep.
And then stole their taser.
Yep.
So he was trying to flee, I think, when they shot him.
Two cops.
Right.
It's hard to make an arrest of someone who doesn't want to be arrested.
Been there before.
So let's say this. In that scenario, the guy steals the taser and begins to run.
Yep.
Can the police use deadly force against him now?
If he had just continued running, probably not. But he turned and pointed his taser back at the officer. And I know we think of tasers, and I'll defer to the officer here if he disagrees with what I'm saying. We think of tasers as a non-deadly force weapon because we think of it as being used in a defensive capacity. And when it's used in that way, it is non-deadly force. But a defensive use of a taser or pepper spray, for example, is very different than an offensive use. An offensive use, you're trying to debilitate your victim, presumably not to stop as you would in self-defense, but to continue to use force or predate on them in some way. So being debilitated, no longer able to defend yourself, to my mind, it's no different than getting hit in the head with a baton and getting knocked unconscious. You're helpless now. So an offensive use of these weapons to debilitate someone, I would characterize as deadly force, meaning force likely to cause death or serious bodily injury.
So let's go to the Karmelo Anthony debate as it is. As described, we have, you're an officer, so I'm or detective. So I'm curious.
At ease, gentlemen. At ease.
These police reports, how substantive are they in court, or does this not get used? Like, you will need the statement from the officer and the witness.
Yes, I'm actually really surprised that they put all this information up for my city. These statements by these officers, it's called a P73. It's basically saying, hey, listen, you were involved in a homicide. You showed up. I need you to write this, and that goes directly to the homicide detective. It's not shared with the public. This being shared with the public is huge. I mean, the transparency is amazing, and also the work that these officers did is amazing.
I think it's a risk.
How so?
Could this not prejudice a jury and be used by the defense to argue that information? So they released only select witness statements, despite the fact that you've got this list of witnesses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 31 witnesses. And they've released statements of like 3 in these reports.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. Like, 1, you get transparency, but 2, you get everybody on the internet trying to make their own ideas of what's going on and what the police are hiding. My department, those statements are held tight. You don't get a look at that because of all the crap that can come up from it. Double-edged sword.
Well,
But all those statements would be used in court.
And yet the only way to address that is in voir dire, is in jury selection. And when the jurors are instructed, the judge will instruct the jurors, you are only allowed to come to a verdict based on the evidence, the testimony, the law you get in. I know. And we also live in a world where there are no, the jury's supposed to come in like a blank sheet of paper, knowing nothing about the case at all. That's the ideal. And in the past, you could get away with that. But today, especially with any high-profile case, there is no juror who's not been exposed. We get this into this a lot when defendants want a change in venue. They want the trial held in a different city or something. And invariably, the judges look at them and say, where in this state, this happened with Derek Chauvin, where in this state do you think you could hold this trial that doesn't have the same level of exposure? It's the internet. It's not a local paper.
Well, I think Chauvin should have been released free and charges dropped.
Yeah, of course.
So for those that are not familiar, when the judge said that there is no venue in this state where you will be free from this, prejudice, it's like, okay, you're free to go.
That's my view as well. If you cannot offer an impartial jury to someone entitled to an impartial jury under the Constitution, you cannot justly try that person.
Right.
The answer is not to try them unjustly.
Right.
The answer is you can't try them.
Would it make sense? I already have a general idea of what people are going to say to this, but would it make sense to change venue to a different state?
But you can't. I mean, our structure isn't set up that way. If it's a state crime, it has to be tried in that state.
The argument being those residents are not your peers.
Only those courts have lawful jurisdiction, have authority to hear that dispute.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.